It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode number 53, Beneath the Helmet. Thanks so much for tuning in and appreciate you being part of the BTH community. Today, I got a chance to sit down and have an amazing talk with a good friend of mine, Jen Grigg. So Jen's been in the fire service for several decades, and she just recently made a transition into coaching and hypnosis. She works a lot with supporting women and first responders. So she's going to share a lot of her own self-worth, confidence building, how she overhauled her life, and some of the struggles that kind of came with that as well. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Until next time, stay well. All right, welcome back, everyone. I got another amazing conversation we're about to jump into today. Season number 2, Beneath the Helmet. Once again, thank you all for your kind of followership, sharing, liking. Definitely your participation in the BTH community is much appreciated. So today I'm going to have a chance to sit down with actually a very close friend and someone I've gained to know over the years, a fellow firefighter. Retired now, which is where we're going to dig into. Well, maybe not totally retired, but retired from her career in the fire service. And yeah, we've been chatting over the years, and also a fellow coach. So I'd love to introduce Jen Grigg. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess it is. It is afternoon. I am super excited to be here. We've talked about doing this for a long time, and I'm glad that we're finally getting around to it.
Exactly. So, Jen, tell us a little bit about who you are as a person and kind of where you came from up till today, meeting us on this podcast conversation.
Well, after 30 years in the fire service and burning out completely last year, which was something that you actually were instrumental in helping me through, I've kind of overhauled my life. And I was laughing about that the other day as I was filling out the form for the podcast and came up with this term because I thought it's perfect for the fire service community. But it also really describes the changes I've undergone in the last year, even less than a year, with changing my physical health, my mental health, physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health, and getting myself to a place where I walked away from a job that I'd been in for several years, and I'm embracing a whole new journey, and there's no map to it.
Oh.
And I believe in the past you told me I am the map, or I'm making the map when I shared frustration about not having a map. But
Yep.
That's kind of a Coles Notes version.
Beautiful. Well, you're navigating a brand new map right now, so that's pretty awesome. So 30 years in the fire service, congratulations. And what was your final posting? What was that? Just with the listener right now, what was your final posting in career?
Instructor with the Ontario Fire College. So I worked for the Fire Marshal's office here in Ontario and did that for the last 5 years.
Beautiful. So tell us a little bit about maybe someone who's listening right now might be struggling with burnout themselves, or maybe not even recognizing they're going through burnout. What were some of the key signs that you saw in your life, and where did it show up, and how did it show up that you were feeling burnt out?
Oh, for me, it was driven by a deep sense of unworthiness. So in my job, I was the only instructor on a team of 8 or 10 instructors. And I always felt this drive to have to keep up with the fellas. I need to work as hard as the guys. And it just wasn't true to my nature to work that hard. But in that environment, I'd look around and see guys they're just, no matter what, they kept it going. So I tried to do that too. But it was this deep sense of, or lack of self-worth. So I always felt the need to have to prove myself. And it took me a long time to unpack that and figure out where it was coming from.
Mm.
And then, yeah, it's changed everything for me, rebuilding my sense of self-worth and my sense of safety. There was a big component in there that I didn't feel safe or worthy, and they were driving my behavior and causing me to work overwork and eventually burnout.
Do you recall the day or the moment or event that led to you going, there's something not right here. I'm out of balance.
What stands out in my mind as the beginning of kind of the downward descent was I was trying to board an airplane in Thunder Bay with a colleague of mine to fly down to Toronto for some meetings, team meetings. And I couldn't get on the plane because my driver's license and my health card had both expired. And I stood at the gate looking at my colleague almost in tears, like, I can't get on the plane. I can't get on the plane. I can't believe this. And my next thought was, how did I get here? How am I so out of touch with my life that these things have expired and I wasn't aware of them? And it was just, it's a pinpoint in where this downward spiral happened or downward, spiral is really what it turned into. But that was in the fall of 2022. And because I am who I am, or who I was rather, I just worked harder to try and overcompensate. But on a deeper level, I knew that I was heading in the wrong direction. I knew my life felt out of control and that I was disconnected. And then fast forward to January of 2023, my mom was diagnosed with skin cancer. So I kind of put my life on hold and went down southern Ontario to stay with her and help her through that. And I tried to work from home. I had permission to do that while I was down taking care of my mom. And I was trying to juggle everything. Mom got better. I returned home. And then I think I actually talked to you within a couple of days of that. And I was experiencing post-traumatic stress. And the only reason I realized that was because I said to my husband, the way I'm feeling reminds me of when you've gone to a bad call and weird things start happening to you afterwards. And I think I went off work not too long after that, actually. I remember having that conversation with you. And I thought I was only going to be off for a month or so, and then I'd be back to work, which was not the case.
Well, I'm sure it's gut-wrenching to lead the fire service and your career and everything like that. But on the flip side, I'm so proud of you for making that decision, making that leap, because it's going to be the best thing for you in the long term. But it's you got to be brave to do that, right? And I congratulate you and kudos to you, even though it was probably the hardest thing in your life to do. Maybe not. Maybe it was the easiest thing, but I congratulate you for making that step. So, because I know it's not easy.
It absolutely is a doozy. And I actually went back late summer last year. I was off for about 7 or 8 months in total and returned to work and tried to show up like everything's great. I'm perfect. I'm 110%. I'm going to show them I'm great and blah, blah, blah. And after a month back, I went off again for another month, or I was back for a couple and I took another month off because it still I wasn't in the right place. But I wasn't able to finally leave my job until I got myself healthy. Because I didn't want to. I got paperwork from my employer actually about going on long-term disability. And I remember thinking, no, that's not what I want. I'm capable of working, maybe just not, this isn't the right match anymore. So I knew that much, but I continued to work on myself and get healthier so that when I finally made the decision to leave the job, which took a long time, like a year to get there, I left feeling very good about my contribution to the employer and to the organization and about where I was heading.
Nice.
Because I remember having conversations with you early on about, I was terrified to leave that job because my identity was completely wrapped up in it.
100%.
And I don't know if this happens with men the way it does with women, in my experience. But I was terrified to not be that person anymore because I didn't know who I was without that. So by the time I got myself healthy, that wasn't an issue for me anymore. I don't have the fear of I'm a nobody if I don't have that job, but that drove me for a long time too.
Yeah, I can't speak for all males, but I know for myself and a lot of people that I interviewed is that the fire service is a different beast, and people truly do think of it as who they are, their soul, right? And I
Yeah.
think there's more and more people getting to understand that there's more to life than the fire service. Even though we love it to bits, and there's nothing, it's the best career in the world in some aspects. Um, it's also very tied to who we are, right? So if we can let that go just a little bit and, become a father, a husband, a wife, a daughter, whatever, more than being a firefighter, I think that's key to some wellness for sure.
Yeah, I think it's for sure you're walking a fine line when you're so identified with
Mm.
a
Yes.
role, whether it's a job or as a parent or a spouse or whatever it is. You What happens if that thing isn't there
Mhm.
anymore? Definitely there's going to be some struggle there, but yeah, I was very happy that I got to a place where that thought didn't terrify
Mhm.
me anymore. And in fact, I knew that I'd be okay. Because I remember asking you, did you ever worry about not being a chief anymore or who you would be if you
Mhm.
weren't a chief?
Mhm.
And you had a completely different perspective, which was that's something I've done. And now I'm carrying on building on that, which really helped me reframe this is all I am and I'm nothing without
Right.
that.
It's a
So,
mindset shift, right? So it's not something that you're born with. It's something you have to kind of go through and maybe feel some of those heartaches and experiences to change that mindset, right? Because there is more to life than our occupations. Our family is with us
mhm,
until the day we die.
absolutely.
Our careers are not with us until the day we die. So for the listener
Yeah.
who's listening right now, how could they prepare a little bit better if they're feeling like, okay, my life needs some change. My life needs an overhaul. What could be some of the things that they could be starting to think about on their own to make that big step? Any thoughts, sir?
I think if you're somebody who feels like there's a change, like you need to have a change, or you're ready for a change, or you need an area of your life to change. For me, the biggest thing was realizing it's not anything out there; it's in
Mm.
here. And there was a lot of things that I needed to work on inside before I would see kind of the outside things change. Because for a long time, I blamed my workplace as the
Mm.
problem. But I knew enough to know there was my challenges, maybe workplace challenges, and other people's challenges. And it was my job to just figure out what was mine and what I could help with
Mhm.
or have any control over, because we don't have control over other people or a lot of other things. So, kind of a first step I would say is that understanding what you have control over and what you
Mhm.
don't. I knew that I couldn't control how other people saw me, and especially with my own self-worth issues and this desire to prove myself, which came from childhood because my father was a police officer, and I know I was loved growing up, but I didn't necessarily feel that
Mm.
way. And my father was very closed off emotionally, so that drove me to kind of look to other people, generally men or bosses, to like validate me and tell me I'm doing a good job. So I realized I have no control over how my boss sees me, but I do have control over the way I think of myself, the way I take care of myself, and that kind of stuff. So I began just focusing on what was within my control,
Mhm.
which was my health and well being.
Love it. So how do you discover some of these things that you needed to work on, such as your self-worth, um, mindsets?
Um,
Like what tools did you use out there, or was there coaching or friends or your own internal kind of meditation on this, or how did it come to you that this was what you needed in your life?
well, I'm definitely a serial course taker, as we've talked about in the
Yep.
past.
Yep.
Actually,
100%.
a little over a year ago, I think you said to me, "No more courses, no more training. You just got to stop for a bit," and I did. But I've always kind of gone after a spiritual self help kind of perspective about healing my own stuff and getting my shit together,
Mhm.
so to speak. And so I had taken certification courses in coaching, different kinds of coaching, life coaching, body language coaching, and hypnotherapy. And hypnotherapy was one that really made a big
Mm.
difference for me. And it um, it gave me a lot of tools to start to help myself not only rewire my own thinking, because hypnotherapy like bypasses the conscious thinking mind and gets to the subconscious, which is important because our thinking mind, I think 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day. And most of those are on repeat. They're the same thoughts over and over again. And we get stuck in that. So hypnotherapy, I really love that because it got past that conscious thinking mind and got into a deeper level. And it also relaxes you, which is super important because when you're in a stress state, in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you have so much cortisol flooding through your system. Your whole system's on high alert. So relaxation is hugely beneficial for people that are dealing with depression or anxiety or work-life stress. And that was one of the tools that really, I loved learning about it. I loved using it. And I loved working with people with hypnotherapy. And another big piece of that puzzle was I did a course last fall on depression so that I could help hypnotherapy clients with depression, and applied everything I was learning in the book to myself because I was still struggling with depression and anxiety a lot last year. And it like got really bad at one point. And this course and the tools I got from it were vital in me. I don't want to say I've cured myself of depression because I don't know. I don't want to say that, but it's definitely, I don't feel like it's ever going to be a problem for me again.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So for myself, I kind of have an idea of hypnotherapy because I've done it myself, to myself, I don't know much about it personally, but I've had the experience going through my own burnout process and going through it. It was incredible. But I'm also thinking there's probably a bunch of people that are thinking, this is what you see at a bar where there's chickens on stage, people turn into chickens and everything like that. So what kind of paints a little picture about what hypnotherapy is and how first responders could access that?
I always laugh because when I'm talking about hypnotherapy, I say that you're totally in control the whole time, and I promise I will not make you cluck like a chicken.
There you go. There you go.
And although I've had friends who are like, I want that, do that to me. But hypnotherapy it really, part of the reason it's so effective is because it does get to that subconscious level, and it puts you in that relaxed state. And those are two key things that help with depression, that help with anxiety, that help with even post-traumatic stress, because that relaxed state just calms your whole physiology. So you get relaxed first. And meditation, I describe it like a guided visualization. So for people who think, I think I said meditation, but hypnosis, it is like a meditation or a guided visualization, and that you close your eyes and you relax and somebody's talking to you. And although it may seem kind of woo-woo, or, they worry about the clucking like a chicken or somebody sitting there with a watch, none of that happens. And it's a way for me to have a conversation with your subconscious. And you'll find patterns there or experiences that have stuck with you that you internalized in a certain way to mean something about you. And then through this conversation, you realize that's not what it meant at all, or that's not what it means about me, or that's not who I am. It was just something that happened maybe for a lot of us, it's something that's happened in childhood, or it could be later in life in a relationship with somebody or an experience we've had. But yeah, I found it super helpful for anything. I love making hypnosis scripts on certain topics and sharing them with people when I'm asked, because it's a different way to help yourself. And as I've been through therapy, I've done talk therapy, I've done CBT, I've done RRT, all kinds of different things. And although that was all helpful and beneficial, people don't always just want to sit and talk about their problems, and they certainly don't want to revisit traumatizing memories. So this is a different way to access some of the information and help you move forward and let go of things and heal things. To me, it's a lot of finding the missing puzzle pieces.
Nice. So do you just listen to yourself go through this, or are you as a client saying something back to you, like a story or how you're feeling in the moment, or is it strictly you just sit there and listen and kind of almost go into a meditative state?
Basically, you can just like listen to a hypnosis that I've
Mm,
recorded for you, but ideally we have a session. We talk about what's coming up for you or what you're struggling with, kind of get to the bottom of what it is, because quite often it's not what we think
mm,
it is. Like I might have been um, thinking my job was the problem, when in reality, a lot of my issues and my struggles came back to a self-worth thing, which was causing me to overwork and burn out. So kind of getting to the bottom of that, having that kind of a conversation, and then I'll write a script or a conversation to have with you as a
mm,
through hypnosis, a hypnosis session, and then I'll follow it up with providing a
mm.
recording,
And
an imprint for you to listen to on your
yeah,
own.
yeah. So I'm assuming you can do this online via like Zoom or something like that. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, nice. Hmm, very nice. So what is in your kind of mental health toolkit right now? What do you do on a daily basis to keep everything aligned and balanced?
Um, Definitely hypnotherapy. I have hypnosis that I've recorded for myself and
Mm,
then other ones that I listen
mm,
to. Meditation, yoga. I've never been a hardcore athlete kind of person or anybody who likes to sweat. So I'm a yoga and a walking person. I love being outdoors. And there's so many benefits from like the vitamin D of the sun and just being out in nature. As you know, I always see videos of you
mhm,
out hiking in the beautiful BC countryside. Um, and there's just so much benefit from any of these things to calm your physiology, right? And it's all about getting yourself to a calm state rather than making decisions or choices from that stressed out state. So, yeah, meditation, yoga, hypnotherapy, walking. I'm a very low key person and I can be like the extrovert, but as an introvert, managing my energy is a very big
mm,
thing. So just recognizing when I've had enough peopling. And boundaries is a big thing. Understanding kind of where your limits are with things and knowing when you need to take time to care for yourself.
mm,
Because we all have basic human needs. And when those needs aren't being met, that's when we start struggling. Whether you're not eating right or not taking time for yourself, you feel like you're not being seen in your relationship or whatever the case might be. We often have an underlying need that's not being met, but we're looking outwards trying to figure it out and just fix
mhm,
it, especially for type A
mhm, mhm.
personalities in the fire service. We're all about fixing it. It's very hard to turn that and ask ourselves, like, what do we need? Because we're so externally focused.
So you talked about boundaries. Um, I know that's a struggle for a lot of people is boundaries, including myself. And boundaries was a huge component, huge factor in my personal burnout. What have you done in your life to create some healthy boundaries, and what kind of tips could you to share with the listener today?
I think it's important to check in with yourself to know where that boundary might be crossed or where you need to kind of instill that boundary. For me, even when I returned to work, I found myself going from checking my emails in the evenings all the time, answering students because I was an instructor. I had a lot of courses running. I had to stop doing that and not checking my phone and not making myself available after hours because it's hard enough when you work from home to have any kind of a boundary because your work is now in your home. It's in front of you all the
Mhm,
time. So you don't have that physical break anymore. So that was definitely one thing, is having those boundaries um, around work and just fighting the urge to be like, oh yeah, I can do
mhm,
that and I can help there and I'll go teach that course, because that was just getting myself back into that slippery slope of trying to prove myself again. Boundaries are a huge self-worth thing
mhm,
and a confidence booster, because when you're used to letting yourself down, that's a hard thing to overcome. And putting boundaries in place, saying to your boss or your partner or whoever it might be, this is what I need right now. That's huge. And that's not easy for people to do. But the more you do it, the easier it
mhm.
gets. And maybe that's you probably agree with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Boundaries are tough, but once you
Mhm.
start getting used to using them, it becomes easier. It's like
Yeah.
anything. It's a muscle.
Yeah, I always say this. I'm sure the listeners probably already heard this a few times, but no is a complete sentence. When we say no to something, we don't owe it to anyone to explain why we're saying no. We just no is our answer, and it's a complete sentence. And that's the hardest thing to actually say, no to something. But once you do, wow, yeah, your
Hmm.
self-worth, your confidence, everything goes up, right? Because now you are the boss, right? So you have a bit more control in your life, right? Versus saying yes to everything.
Yeah, it for sure is. It does build your confidence and it builds your sense of self-worth because you're not letting yourself down
Exactly.
anymore. Because we're so used to being there for other people, we don't know how to be there for ourselves. And if you have like a history of depression like I did, or childhood trauma, or feelings of unworthiness, you're the last person you're thinking of.
Mhm.
And it's very uncomfortable to start setting boundaries and thinking about yourself in that way. But even still, right before yesterday, actually, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed with stuff and I think it was a little bit of my perfectionism coming out. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to reschedule this interview
Mhm.
because I don't have this, and this in my mind. I don't have all these things. I'm not completely prepared. I don't have this scripted. I don't like whatever. I need to learn a little bit more about what I'm talking
Well,
about
thank you for
or
not
blah, blah, blah.
canceling.
And
Because
yeah,
it's way better
I
when it's just
totally,
a
and that,
natural conversation, right? So it's way better that way than scripted and everything. So thank you.
yeah. And scripted has never worked for
Mhm.
me anyway, but the feeling of needing to be more prepared is a coping mechanism. It's a negative coping mechanism. It's a stress response. It's a pattern for
Mhm.
me. I get overwhelmed and I shut down and I start like clearing everything off my plate. I cancel appointments. So yesterday I had my phone in my hand and I looked up your email and I was about to, and then I heard a little voice within say, how about you don't this time?
Nice.
Because that's my pattern is like, cancel everything. So I've found that the more I do this, the more I'm facing fears about things that I've avoided for
Mhm.
lifelong topics. In the last week alone, there's a couple big ones that have come up for me. And instead of doing my shutdown, I'm getting myself in a safe place and kind of working on a little bit of mindset and talking to myself, talking to my inner child. And I'm taking steps that I've not been able to take for like most of my adult life. So breaking the pattern is huge for me. And every time something comes up and I feel that stress response kick in, and I'm able to be like, no, not this time.
Mhm.
That is such a confidence builder. Just like personally, like your sense of self-worth keeps growing because when you can break patterns that are so deeply ingrained, that's very powerful and very empowering. So I was pretty happy that I didn't.
Yes. Me too. Me too.
I was pretty proud of
Yeah.
myself for that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So as a coach yourself, and I know as the coaching industry, I left the fire service, a high burnout occupation, to become a coach, which ironically is a very high burnout occupation as well. Uh, so I'd love to hear how you kind of are setting yourself up for making sure you don't burn out in your encore career as a coach and hypnotherapist. Any thoughts there?
It's again going back to just checking in
Mm.
with myself because as soon as you make space in your life for something, those of us that tend to do
Mhm.
this, tend to fill it up
Mhm.
again right away. So by taking courses, for example. So I've been a big piece of it is self
Mm.
awareness, recognizing your patterns, recognizing your thought patterns, and kind of monitoring. So I'm very conscious of if I'm doing too much or s- maybe booking too many people to be like, okay, let's take a step back. You don't have to do all this right now. You don't have to do all this at once. And that's kind of a red flag for me is if I feel like I'm going overboard. That it's that self-worth thing and that proving thing again. So I take my time. Like, I take time to think about what I'm doing. I take time to really feel into how many appointments or how many calls a day do you feel comfortable with? And that's going to increase as things, I get processes and stuff set in place. But just starting out with anything, I think it's important to remind yourself that baby steps matter. Like, small steps make a big difference.
Yep.
Last year, when I was doing a lot of the things I was doing, I didn't know I would be here today looking back at my life and going, oh my God, I just overhauled like everything. I feel amazing. I've lost weight. I'm healthier. I'm happier. I'm doing things I wanted to do, but didn't have the capacity to do before. I think capacity is a good word too, because I want to make sure that I bring my best to what I'm doing. And if I'm depleted, or if I'm coming at it from a I need to prove myself perspective, or I need to keep up with other people in the coaching space, then that's coming from not a healthy place. So having that self-awareness again, to just monitor what my intentions are and where my boundaries are and what's manageable for my energy and what allows me to bring my best to something, rather than what's left of me, which is what you do when you're burning out. You're not bringing your best
100%.
to anything, your relationships or,
I find it so borderline incredible or fascinating that it's so hard to connect with yourself. It's something that, I don't know, maybe it comes with age and maturity, but it's from all the coaches that I've worked with and people that I've known in the fire service, connecting with self has been one of the hardest things to do. We're just go, go, go. We're busy. We're fixers, like you mentioned before. It's so tough to actually just be with yourself. But wow, that was probably one of the big game changers in my recovery, was just being by myself, and not like hiding or being a recluse or anything like that. It was more just having time to just no distractions. I was just sitting with myself. Did you find the same with yourself? That just you needed that break to just be with yourself?
yeah, it's, I, for a long time, struggled with not doing anything or feeling like I wasn't doing anything productive. There was something in me, that unworthiness, that drove me to always feel like whatever I'm doing, it's got to be productive, whether it's from childhood programming or what it was. That I had this belief that I myself as a human being sitting here doing nothing was not enough. You're not contributing to the world or the society or life if you're just sitting there doing nothing. And I think anytime you feel like, oh, I can't relax, or if you're somebody that can't relax or can't sit still, or the quiet rattles you, I would ask myself why. What's beneath that? But one of the things that I did last year, it was a 6-month program with an Ayurvedic practitioner. So I'm of the age where I was not only struggling with depression and anxiety, but a lot of symptoms of menopause were coming up again. So I wasn't sleeping well. I had brain fog. I just felt disconnected. I wasn't happy. I felt completely empty. It was another piece of this was when we bought our house. We moved in July. Again, after 3 years in northwestern Ontario. Now we're in northeastern Ontario because my husband got a new job and we relocated. And we bought a house on the water. It was like a dream home. And I was infinitely aware that we had this beautiful home on the water. We both had, I was successful in my career. He had a new career, had a grandbaby on the way. And yet I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. And that was very scary to me because I was like, is it me? Am I broken? Am I never do I lack the capacity to be happy? And it sent me on a bit of a journey. And this is while I'm still off work and still trying to figure out all that. So I reached out to Ayurvedic practitioner who specializes in menopause, and she's in Alberta. And because I didn't want to go back on medication. My doctor was trying to get me to go back on antidepressants, and I've been off them for over a year now. And to me, that was not the route I wanted to go. I wanted to do it naturally. So the premise of Ayurveda is resetting your gut. And so much of your gut health affects everything else. So it was really difficult for me because I had to learn how to cook. And my husband is the cook in the family. I am not. So one thing I will avoid at all costs is cooking. And it's because I never really learned to nurture myself. Like we used to joke that if my husband was going to be away, as long as I had a loaf of bread and a box of cereal, I could survive for the week.
Yep.
So this was a new level of taking care of myself. Like you wouldn't believe how uncomfortable this was for me to actually think about what do I want to eat and to take the time to cook something for myself. But Ayurveda is basically whole foods, a lot of fruits and vegetables. I still eat like white meat, but it was difficult to cook for myself. And it really showed me how little effort I put into caring for myself. So something as simple as, okay, I have to think about this ahead of time. What do I want to eat? And I'm going to cook it. It really started a shift for me when it came to self-care and self-nurturing. Like, you need to honor yourself to the point where you treat yourself like your child, for those who have kids, or your spouse, or your best friend. Because I completely was ignoring myself for many, many years. And it's no wonder that I lost myself because I was too busy trying to be something I wasn't. I'd lost connection. So that Ayurveda program, really, there was things like a dry scrub that you do before you get in the shower, or massaging with different kinds of oil like sesame oil or coconut oil. And just little things like that. Talk about self-care. This wasn't just going for a massage or a pedicure or whatever. This was like all new to me, and it felt really uncomfortable. But as the more I did it, the more I was like, it really changes things when you start to care for yourself. And I say like you would your kids, because it's kind of, when you have kids, you would do anything for them. And doing that for yourself is just the best gift you can give yourself. Like self-love and self-care, I think people roll their eyes at, but it's probably one of the most important pieces of getting healthy.
I agree. Yeah. And I think we say in the fire service all the time, right? The customer comes first. But my thought is let's start thinking about ourselves first as responders. So we're in perfect condition, mentally, spiritually, physically. So we can be that perfect responder that the community is looking for, right? And we spend so much time on that performance and the tactics of it, but we forget about ourselves and making sure that we're running at fully leaded up and ready to go, right? So yeah, it's a big change in your life. That was a big thing for me as well. I imagine cooking probably was also a little bit meditative for you as well. Like I find it personally, when I'm cooking, it's a nice way to kind of defrag at the end of the day, relax. You can throw some music on and just chop away. I find it very therapeutic. Did you find that as well, or was it more like a job?
I was surprised actually when I started playing with some recipes for healthier foods, like vegan, not 100% vegan, but vegan kind of foods. And I was amazed at how much I enjoyed it. And I think it was because I was using my body and not sitting in my mind, because I spent so much time on a computer doing courses. Like, that's kind of my comfort area, is the book nerd side of me or the academic side of me. So you just using my body, doing something different, creating something tangible. It was that part I enjoyed, although I do get a little frustrated if there's too many steps. I get confused and it messy, like too many bowls, it gets messy, and I don't like that part of it. But anything I feel resistance to, I know that there's something so beneficial in it for me. and it's worth taking the time to lean into. So it's it very powerful program, but it it was fantastic because it opened my eyes to caring for myself. And when I started eating better, I lost weight instantly, and that made me feel better. I learned what it was like to feel healthy in my body, which was huge for me because you feel sluggish, you feel tired. Like when you get your gut healthy, it changes everything too. There's more serotonin that's created in our gut than our brain. So of course it would make a difference on my mental health and my brain fog, and I started sleeping better, and everything just kind of got better.
Love it.
Yeah.
Once again, very proud of you. So you talked about overhauling your life. I want to dig on this a little deeper. So let's go over each component that you kind of talked about. So emotional health. So how did you overhaul yourself in mental, emotional support? Like what was that? What did you do for that?
Mentally, when I did that online depression course so that I could help clients with it, it was a game changer for me with my patterns of thinking. So it gave me tools to help myself and to understand what, for me, and this made sense. And I know there's many different opinions out there, but it helped me understand what depression is and why it's been something that I kept circling or kept recircling in my life or resurfacing in my life. Because depression is rumination, and it's rumination without taking action. So when you can't take an action on something and all you're doing is looping these negative thoughts all the time, it's hopeless. You feel hopeless because you're not able to do anything about this situation. And when people are suffering from depression, their brains are overactive. So when they go to sleep at night, their brains are overactive, which affects REM sleep and taxes your system, and you wake up exhausted. So understanding that piece of it and understanding that it's all these things that were going through my brain that I couldn't take action on that were keeping me in this place. So I started to monitor my thoughts more. I also kept using hypnosis to help me reframe things and have a different perspective on things. And then awareness of my patterns. So when I would catch myself ruminating on something, I could switch directions with it. Or if there was something that was bothering me, I would journal about it or talk to my husband about it. Identify things I could take action on, because that reconnects you to it builds your self-worth. It shows that inner child that they matter. It helps you feel competent and capable because you're taking action on something and maybe getting a resolution rather than just all these thoughts that keep circling. So for my mental and emotional health, both, understanding depression and how I could stop that cycle made a huge difference for me, because I was late summer, I had gotten into a place where I was contemplating ending it. And I had been there before and I couldn't believe I was back there again. It just felt like I felt hopeless and that I would never figure this out because this has been a lifelong pattern for me. And then that course was something, it was a tool I turned to, and it helped me stop that pattern and made such a huge difference for me. So I'm always seeking answers, but there's so many answers out there. You really have to be willing to be an advocate for yourself, and you need to be willing to try different things. I know you talked about, you tried a whole bunch of different healing modalities and somatic things to see what worked for you.
Exactly.
And that really was a big thing for me because I adopted that mindset of, okay, so not everything's going to work for me. I'm going to keep trying and find out what does. So for me, this course that I did more for me than medication, because I was on antidepressants on and off them for a very long time, and I would still end up in the same place. Right. So I knew that it wasn't necessarily a chemical imbalance. Although that's common understanding is that, it's a chemical thing or a hormonal thing. But, and my physical health, when I lost the weight with the Ayurveda program and implemented a lot of healthier habits, like walking every day with my dogs and doing meditation and doing yoga, that helped my physical health. And it's like 4 tires on a car. If you have one area, one flat tire, it puts stress on all the other tires.
Totally.
So as you start to work on one area, there's a ripple effect throughout your life in the other areas that helps improve everything. And spiritually, it was taking time for meditation and for writing and stuff. Because when we get busy, the first things we do is ditch our healthy habits.
Unfortunately.
So again, I would feel myself a little bit stressed out or something a little bit anxious. And I would think, oh, I haven't walked in a couple of days, or I've been like on my computer all the time trying to get this thing done. So it's like situational awareness. It's being aware of what you're doing and how you're feeling, because when you're not feeling at your best, you're not able to give other people your best. Or, you probably know yourself. You're infinitely patient with people, dogs or kids or whoever, patience on calls, when you're at your best. And when you're not, when you're feeling stressed out and overworked or overwhelmed, you have less patience. You have less enjoyment.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's kind of going back to that. We're doing a disservice to our public if we're not taking care of ourselves, right? You don't have to be an elite athlete or anything like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just a well-being in your body, mind, body, and spirit, right? So, yeah, if you want to show up and be the best firefighter, it's time to start working on your whole holistic self, right?
Yeah.
So, I'd love to hear what's the one thing that pops in your mind that has changed due to this overhaul for the better?
Definitely feeling worthy is a big change for me. It was a big core element that drove my decisions and my behavior, was this not feeling enough, my not enoughness, I would call it. And as I worked on these different areas of my life, I built my self-worth back up to where I was comfortable to leave this job, like a full-time job, a good government job, leave it because there was more I wanted to do for my life. I wanted to see what else I was capable of. And I wanted to regain the capacity to do different things rather than feeling like I didn't have the space or the time to do it. So if I hadn't built up my own self-worth, I couldn't have done that. You make better decisions for yourself when you know who you are and you feel good about yourself and you know what's right for you, because otherwise you're at the whim of your employer or your partner or society or whatever the case may be. So yeah, self-worth and safety were big pieces that I needed to create for myself to be able to make better decisions, take better actions, and actually start creating the life that I wanted to live and feel connected to the one I have.
You've mentioned safety. You mentioned safety a few times. I want to double click on that a little deeper. How did you, or what tools did you use, or how did you decide that you're feeling safer? Like, what was it in your body that you felt, I'm in a safe spot now, versus feeling unsafe? Because I think that's also another area that people don't really know how to adjust or even recognize in the first place.
Yeah, actually not recognizing it in the first place is a big one. And it goes back to those basic human needs we all have, right? Like whether it's the 9 human givens or the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like we know safety is a basic human need. And because I had childhood trauma and had different things go on in my life, my sense of safety hadn't been there. So understanding that, I recognized whenever I didn't feel safe, I would take certain actions like the avoid or the shut down, the fight or flight. And so it was trying to find ways, what makes me feel safe and how do I build that? Part of it was through using hypnosis. Part of it is through recognizing those depressive thoughts, because depression is a lot of black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking, perfectionism. So those thinking patterns, recognizing those, because I could be physically safe, but emotionally or mentally, if I don't feel safe in the environment, then what is it about the environment that's making me not feel safe? And then looking at what can I do to change that? Safety was definitely a core challenge for me because of my past, but I recognized at some point last summer or late summer, early fall, that because I was still struggling at work, I felt that I wasn't being treated sometimes equally with other employees and just treated differently because I was the only woman. And I had an awareness one day that I needed to stop making myself a victim or seeing myself as a victim. And that really changed things for me because as somebody who had experienced sexual abuse when I was younger, I had this victim mentality. And I saw most men as not safe. And it was a dynamic that I knew if I didn't change this, I would probably never be happy in the fire service, as happy as I could be. So understanding that if I saw myself as a victim, these patterns were going to continue, when in reality, I probably wasn't treated any different or may not have been treated differently from my colleagues. It was my mindset that saw problems when maybe there weren't any.
Right.
So the victim mindset for me was a huge piece of the puzzle, and just realizing, okay, well, what if you're not a victim? How would it feel to not feel like a victim? What can you do to not feel like a victim? And a lot of that just came back to building my self-worth, because it built my self-confidence. So the only thing I have control over is my internal world. So it goes back to that again. I can't control this external world, but there's got to be a way that I can build myself up enough that I feel safe to go through the world and not feel triggered by things. So that was a big piece of it too.
Beautiful. I'm going to say it again. Very proud of your growth over the last couple of years. Very happy to see this. So where do you need more support in your life? This is a question that I'm asking everyone in season 2, and just kind of, testing the field. Where do you need more support in your life to thrive?
I think for me, it's been having conversations with my husband, because he's the one that's here all the time for me. Or a trusted girlfriend that I'll reach out to, because as it's a never ending journey, right? We're always learning and growing and healing. And I believe that as you kind of start up leveling in your life or kind of stepping up your game a little bit, things are going to be triggered again, or there's another layer to peel back. Kind of like yesterday when I was thinking about canceling this because I didn't feel prepared enough. And really that thought is just my insecurity and feeding that feeling of not enoughness. So if I'd canceled this interview, I would have reinforced that you're not enough as you are. You need to prepare better to make yourself acceptable. It would have fed that mindset. So making the decision to, instead of feeding the insecurity, feed my inner child or feed my self-confidence, by making that decision, it sent a message that no, we're good. Like, no matter how this turns out, it's going to be a good conversation, and it's what needs to be said or needs to come out. So definitely interrupting patterns for me. And I do that by, if I can't kind of journal it out or figure it out on my own, I'll talk to my husband. So I woke up in the other night, in the middle of the night, and my brain was going about a new opportunity that's coming that I'm second guessing, having some misgivings about or some insecurities about. And he happened to wake up too. So I had a moment where I was like, I don't want to bother him. It's the middle of the night. He doesn't want to have a conversation. But on the other hand, I was like, we're a team. what I really need from him right now is to talk to me about this. And God bless him, he talked to me for an hour in the middle of the night and helped me pick it apart and see that these are just insecurities, and they're not my reality. They're not my truth. This is just more of the old patterns I'm continuously breaking. So still learning to ask for help is a big one.
True.
Like you're never above asking for help in whatever form that looks like, or from whoever it is. And people can see, and I guess this is one of the benefits of working with a coach or a therapist, is that they have an objective point of view. So we get so caught in our own emotional attachment to everything that's going on in our life, we can't see beyond it. So I've had conversations with you, I've had conversations and coaching calls with you, where you're able to see the high level view and see me and all my capabilities without the emotional baggage that I feel is a reality when it's not. Emotions are real, but they don't mean that's who I am. So having that high level perspective, or that objective friend, person, confidant, coach to talk to, is a big support tool as well.
100%. So what is one question that you wish I asked you that I have not asked you? Is there anything kind of pressing in your mind?
That's a good question.
Is there something that you're like, I wish Arjuna said this. That would have made my day. Because I really wanted to share this with the world, but maybe we've covered everything. That's totally cool. But
one thing I would definitely want people to know is that you're not broken. My firm belief is that no matter how damaged you feel, or broken or hopeless you feel, you aren't. You aren't broken. It's not hopeless. You're not damaged goods. You don't lack the capacity for happiness and joy. These are all the things I told myself for a lot of my life. And those thoughts were what got me to a place last fall again, where, I called my husband and I said, you need to hide those pills that are in the house, because I'm thinking about taking them. And to have that moment and to look back on it now and to think, I'm the same person I was then, same flesh and bones, same heart, same person, same good person. But my beliefs in that moment were such that I was contemplating ending it to end that inner turmoil. So yeah, there's work to do, but there's ways to do it. And nobody is unworthy. From somebody who really suffered from feelings of not feeling worthy and not feeling enough as the human being that I am, I can guarantee that is not your story. That is not who you are. There is so much about you that you probably don't even recognize. And a lot of that, for me, came from you. Having somebody like you, we had become friends through writing for Firefighting in Canada, and reached out to each other for different reasons over the years. But for me, having you see something in me that I didn't see in myself carried a little bit different weight than hearing that from my husband. Because it's easy for me to think, oh, he's just telling me, he's my husband, he has to say that or whatever. So, but yeah, it's not hopeless. It's never hopeless. And if I can overhaul my life the way I did from where I was last year to this year, it's possible.
Very inspirational.
For anybody.
Yeah, very inspirational. Well, Jen, it's been an honor to sit down and have a great conversation with you, because I think, as you said many times, we've had lots of discussions, and I've seen the ups and the downs of your journey. And I just feel so blessed to have a chat with you today and see your smiling face and kind of the radiance I can feel from you, that you're in the right spot in the right place. Right. So good job for all the heavy lifting. You did all the work. So how can people find out more about your offerings, your coaching, your hypnotherapy? And I'd also love to hear kind of who your target person is that you're working with? Like, who is that kind of person that would really benefit from the work that you're doing now?
I'm working with women. Obviously, I have a soft spot for women who feel a lot of the feelings I had, or that go through that kind of, I don't know who I am anymore stage of their lives, but also, of course, first responders, because I know how hard it is to be somebody who gives so much to help other people, and yet who feels so deeply empty or broken or incapable on the inside. And you really need to, as first responders, that self-care piece is such a big thing, because you're giving so much to other people into the community and can suffer so much because of that. So any kind of support that I can offer, I will always be happy to work with any first responders, because it's a unique challenge that people face, and not everybody understands that, especially if you haven't been there and been on the ground and experienced it firsthand. I do have a small website that I've created, which is jennifergriggcoaching.com. So there's some information there and a way to reach out to me if you have questions or want to learn more about what I'm working on or who I'm working with.
Beautiful. What would be one word to summarize your journey in the last year? One word to finalize our chat today.
Survivor.
What does that mean?
And yeah, I'm not sure why that one came up. Obviously, there's been a lot that I've overcome, and we all have. You know what? Seeing yourself as a survivor, because everybody's been through stuff, and especially people in emergency services. Like, there's a reason you burnt out. You're trying to survive, and something wasn't lined up there. You're giving too much to others and not giving enough for yourself. So, survivor. Yeah. It's about going from, it's actually about going from surviving, life in survival mode, to life in thrive mode. Maybe I should have picked the word thrive.
No, that resonated with you, obviously. And, you're going from surviving to survived, right?
Yeah.
So surviving doesn't necessarily mean you're thriving.
Yeah.
Just getting
survival
by.
mode it only gets you so far.
Well, Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for sharing your wisdom and kind of your experience and your journey, and some things for the listener to think about today, and maybe dig a little into their own personal lives of how they can make the transformation that you've made. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and all the best to your encore career in coaching and hypnotherapy.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad we finally got to do this, and I'm glad I didn't cancel and wimp out like I had a pattern of doing. And yeah, it's always a great conversation. I love chatting with you and catching up and doing some good for all those people out there trying to do their best.
That's all right. Awesome. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this great conversation with Jen, and got some nuggets out of this, and some ways that maybe you can start to have some own self-reflection, and to maybe work on some of those overhauling your own life as well. So all the best to you. Until next time, stay well.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.